I'm Taryn Rosenkrantz, and this is Political TrailMix, where strategy meets storytelling, and every episode unpacks the people, power, and politics shaping our country. Let's dig in. Welcome to another episode of Political TrailMix with Taryn. I have two really good friends with me again today, some ad makers who are Democratic operatives who have been in this industry for a while. Not to say that any of us are not young and spry, but to say they've had a lot of great stories from the trail. And that's why I've invited them on today. They are with 76 Words, and I'm not actually sure how long you guys have been in business, but maybe you can tell us when you give your intros there. But I don't know, Matt, you want to go first?
No, I would like Sarah to go first.
Okay, that makes sense. Sarah should.
Hello. Well, thanks for having us. 76 Words has been in business for 14 years now. Before that, Matt and
Wow.
I spent just under a decade at a different firm together. So we've known each other a little bit of time, and have collected a lot of awesome stories and had a lot of awesome wins over that time. And we're excited to tell you about them.
I love it. All right, Matt, hit me.
So yeah, and again, as Sarah noted, we've been together a while. We were together for at another firm for 10 years before that. We have been in the industry throughout a whole bunch of changes and phases and all kinds of seasons of how this thing works. When we started out, we were known as a television firm, which is a category that doesn't really exist anymore.
Does it?
Um, so we haven't quite settled on the new thing. Sometimes I call it moving pictures.
Ooh,
We're still
talkies.
taking suggestions.
One thing I really love to tell people who are starting a new firm or thinking about it is technically 76 Words started on a post-it note, which is when we left the old firm, or the old firm kind of devolved and dissolved in front of us. We kind of had some clients and we had things that needed to be done. So I was on a giant pink bus trying to defeat Mike Pence the first time that was relevant. The first time he was attempting to defund Planned Parenthood. And oh, don't those feel like the good days? Um, and we
So
kind of
little to
looked at
worry
each
about.
other and was like, I guess we have a company, like we should do something formal. Let's sign this post-it note. So
I
there's not a ton of like, while there's a lot of paperwork and you need the lawyers and you need your tax status to be right and all of those sorts of things, and you want to make sure everybody's in agreement, sometimes just doing it is the way to start a company.
I think that that's so true in Democratic politics all the time. It's like if you're going to work in politics, most of it is just doing it, right? Like it's just, we're very Nike right now. Just do it. But like
Yeah.
it is just doing it. It's like picking up where you do the jobs that no one else wants to do. You kind of step in where you need to. Everybody's very collaborative and you just get it done. Like, right? That's the only way to win.
Yeah, a friend of mine who managed to come in from outside of the entertainment industry and get an indie movie made. He said the most important uh, piece of any indie movie making process is a roll date. That essentially you have a day you are going to start shooting, and that clarifies the mind wonderfully
Yeah.
of actors, whether they commit or not, funders, whether they commit or not. Like we are doing this, and stuff had better work by then.
Yeah, yeah, get it done. Get it done. Well, I will say with you guys, we've been in business 14 years too. So that was like must have been a good year for everybody to get into politics. It was
I think it was a good year coming off of very bad years.
Yeah.
That's why. That's
Strange.
why. I was just about to say that is exactly why, because everybody was like, well, that was crushing. And now what are we gonna do? Which might be where we are right now. What a wonderful what a
Yeah,
wonderful
accidental segue there.
analogy here. I know it was a good segue. It has definitely been a tough year. And like every time I think that I've seen everything in politics, something else happens. And I'm like, no, I guess you can still surprise me at any time. But the government is shut down right now. We've got, the 2025 elections in exactly a week. We are 1 week out from that right now as we're talking. And there's so much meat to work with. Like usually as ad makers, they like wait, they have opposition research, like what issues are resonating, like what are the kitchen table issues. And I'm curious what you two think, because I feel like you could make a stack of ads, especially against an incumbent, that would last a lifetime because there's so much going on. And I'm just curious with your guys' take, like, what do you think is going to be next year? Like, if it's 2026 and we're inundated with ads, like, what do you predict, like, people are going to be going after people for the most right now?
Healthcare. It's healthcare. It's cost of living. It's healthcare. It's driving the cost of living. And it's the fact that there are 7 Americans controlling 35% of the global wealth. That's just ridiculous. We are at an unprecedented time in so many ways, but specifically drawing from the unequal distribution, not just of wealth, but of opportunity, of access to be able to build the life you want. It's healthcare ultimately at the end of the day. We are seeing in this shutdown, Democrats actually standing up for healthcare and it getting through to people, which is a remarkable thing right now, particularly when you don't have a huge amount of paid behind it. And there are some, and God bless those organizations that are getting it done. There, it is resonating with people because it's hurting them. And that
Right.
ultimately is the worst part of this, but is what's going to make that the thematic of the next year. And that might also just mean a feeling of a pox on all of your houses. And I think that's something we need to have a very good thermometer for.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I'd 100% second that. I mean, I think I even want to challenge your question a little bit, which is one thing that has been part of this trend over the years we've been doing this is, we work on all these campaigns that would save up their money, and in the end, they'd run 3 television ads, and it was clear what was a television ad, like what was a product that deserved to have resources behind it, and there was very clear demarcations between communications that were funded and communications that were not. And I think we're in a situation where, I mean, you certainly want to be very disciplined if you are committing resources. And I think healthcare is, I think Sarah's exactly right. It's inflation, it's cost of living, particularly a very specific way in which Republicans are very noticeably and distinctly screwing things up in a way that's very easy for people to understand when we tell them. But on the other hand, it's not necessarily one thing, it is a million things. And I think the information environment we're in, we're all learning that, it's not the 3 quote television ads at the end, and it's not even a specific set of funded digital ads. It's a whole range of communications and a whole range of mediums, some of which are truly organic, some of which are cultivatedly organic. And it's not necessarily going to be one thing necessarily. It may well be kind of any number of things, because that's what the people we're going to have talk on our behalf are organically going to care about. And, part of the challenge in this modern world is making sure it all fits into a cohesive whole, but then also, really does organically reflect what people are actually saying and thinking, A, as they're listening, and B, and as they're talking on our behalf.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think I say this a lot, and like when I'm talking to clients and I'm talking to other people, I'm like, the kitchen table really isn't the kitchen table issues anymore either, like because everybody's sitting at their kitchen table looking at a screen. So, you've got to be really aware of what's being said on social media, because they're probably having less conversations. They're having them with, they might even be, I mean, I know my kids text me from upstairs. My husband and I text each other from the living room to the like kitchen, which is not far at all. But there is that like feeling of like what's happening on social media, what's brewing, what their people are talking about, what they're upset about is going to be that much more relevant. And because we're so hyper connected, to Matt's point, I couldn't agree more. There's going to be more than just 3 issues. That traditional idea of like, this is what we should be focused on won't be. Um,
The
and
phrase
also,
kitchen table issues has always struck me as this like very consultant driven privileged phrase because when you're broke, it affects how you think about everything.
right,
Where you think about it is everywhere.
right.
How you parent changes, how you become a spouse changes. So I think that we have to really get our heads around it's a psychological thing that we're dealing with here with
Yeah.
voters, and helping them feel resilient because that's the other part. I mean, what we're seeing in New York is pretty amazing and very reminiscent of other phases of democratic politics, but people want something to be for. They want to
Yeah.
feel hopeful. They want to feel in charge of their own lives.
Yeah, no, for sure. And if you remember correctly, there was this man who won president and he kept talking about hope. It was very popular. I don't know.
And there was a guy from Hope before him.
Yeah, right? This was a thing. Hope was a thing. I actually like I feel very strongly that as we go into this, like there has to be ways for all of us to kind of keep ourselves sane. And like what it is, whether you work in politics or whether you're just enraged by what's happening or whatever it is, people feel this like need of like, what can I do? Like, how can I do things to like kind of make myself feel like I'm making a progress or an impact. And, we are lucky in a lot of ways and unlucky in a lot of other ways being Democratic operatives because we do feel at least like we're part of the process sometimes, but that can make it more insane. And so, like, I know this was a long way of saying, I wanted to talk a little bit about it because both of you live in DC, and it is hard for us as DC residents, like, seeing some of the stuff that you guys are just, it's the National Guard is still here. We've got ice raids. We've got just a very different feel. So it's like you can't even escape at the dog park, right? Like, what is happening in the real world is really right in front of your face, and then we're doing it for a living. So, like, what is your tip or trick or hack? And if you don't have one, that's fine too. We're just surviving. That's surviving is good. But that's my question to either of you.
This is the only question we prepped for because we feel completely unqualified to answer it. Um, I will say two things though. I live in Columbia Heights, which is
Yeah.
experienced
Yeah.
the occupation differently than the rest of the city.
100%. Like you could be a couple streets over and it's not the same as what you're really in the heart of it.
And a lot has happened in our neighborhood that is actually really, it's incredibly sad. It's incredibly scary, but it gives you a sense of community. People are helping other people take their kids to school. People are passing around burner phones, and somebody every night puts up pictures of different ICE vehicles that have been spotted. And that's a horrible way to form community, but it feels almost like that little edges of the pandemic when we
Yeah.
did come together in certain ways. And there is something in there to build off of. There is a feeling to build off of. Matt once said a thing at a campaign retreat that just like I initially had such a bad reaction to about
Oh, I
motivates
can't wait to hear this.
what motivates you. And I believe what you said, Matt, was rage to RT Ryback.
Yeah.
And I was like, rage should never be our motivator. We have to come from a positive place. And except for like, actually, the rage we feel right now, I think gets a lot of us up out of bed, gets a
Yeah.
lot of us doing what we need to do every day. It's a lot of us doing way more than we need to do every day. And that's a good thing.
Yeah. This is the
Yeah,
moment where
I'd
rage
sec
begins.
yeah, I'd second that, which is, yeah, Sarah and I were talking about how we're both kind of negative examples. If there's anyone out there who's figuring out a plan and thinks that more doom scrolling is the answer, I'm up to probably about 14 hours a day and it's not helping. So I'd offer myself as a negative example. But I'd say a couple things. One, Taryn, you made a good point earlier, which is, if you're listening to this and you're a professional, just remember the privilege you have here. And we're talking about how bad the 2010 campaign was. We were working against Michelle Bachmann in 2010. And for
Yeah.
your younger listeners who don't remember ye olden days, she was kind of an early version of some of the dumber,
Yeah.
more incendiary representatives we see now. I mean, she stood out then because now it's
Yeah.
basically the entire Republican caucus.
I know
But
she
she was
seems like cuddly and cute now
Yeah,
compared
yeah, yeah. But she
as a
was
villain, right? Like,
yeah,
but
she
yeah,
was a real
but she
early
was a villain.
adopter of that sort of terribleness. And we were working against her, and for a perfectly good candidate who was not going to win, because it turns out the people in Minnesota 6 really wanted a representative like Michelle Bachmann, unfortunately. And I remember I'd come up with this clever ad idea where we were subverting the idea that you just had 5 or 6 or 7 ads. And I talked the campaign into just making an ad that we were not going to put real money behind to see if we could disrupt the Bachman,
Mm,
see if we could get them to do something stupid with one of their 5 or 6 or 7 ads. And it was a tough internal process. Uh, you know, uh, Getting it made just in-house was difficult. And finally got to it like 4 o'clock on a Friday, and I'm like, well, this sucks. And then I just remembered, like, I did the math on how many people probably knew Michelle Bachmann at that point. And I said, there are probably 1 million people in America who would like to be party to a negative ad about her.
yeah,
And it's not 1 million people, it's me. I'm the one sitting in this chair. And even in the tough times, where things may seem a little futile, it's important to remember your place in the fight.
yeah,
And if there are people who are kind of out there checking this out who are not political professionals, who are just regular community people doing their thing, just remember you guys have more power than ever.
yeah,
When I tried to get involved in a campaign from college, My state was not a swing state. It did not have an interesting Senate race, and there was basically literally nothing I can do. And now, whether it's relational organizing in your campaigns, having you upload your network of friends so you know who to talk to, whether it's a letter writing campaign or a postcard campaign or whatever it is, even people who are feeling very despairing and out of power, there are just more tools now that give regular people a voice and a role in campaigns everywhere. Even if you're somewhere safely blue, even if you're somewhere horrifyingly red, there's always a thing. And just, on the purely morale point, the whole point of authoritarianism is to make you think they have already won.
Mm.
And I think that, it's easy to be very despairing and, as they just run past all the guardrails. But the fact is, even, and I think I'm the designated despairing person in our network here, they haven't won yet. He's not going to be able to cancel the 2028 elections. He's not going to be able to cancel the 2026 elections. They have not repealed. I mean, all of us who have been through a 2010 and a 2014 know that bad elections tend to be followed by good ones. And all these people are organizing against ICE in Sarah's neighborhood. All these people who are, horrified by what's going on, they're going to come back. And I don't think any of us can make any promises about how well the system's going to be working in a year or 3 years or whatever, but there is going to be a thing and we are going to have influence over it no matter who you are. So I think that's the piece to remember.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep saying, like, I felt so good when Jimmy Kimmel, like, showed back up on the air, like, and even that was like a three-step process, right? But like, people can make a difference. Those No Kings protests where they're showing these, like, crowds that are so humongous, you're like, okay, this is real. People are awake. Because what I think happens sometimes is that people aren't awake, but they're awake. And whether they're awakened by rage or not, whatever it is that keeps us going, you're right for us to still have that hope that they have not won yet. I love that. I might, I every time I do one of these, I'm like, I'm gonna put that on like a post-it, going back to your post-it here, and like put it because you need some mantras to keep going. Maybe that's my hack of like how I keep going is have little like inspirational sayings stuck around the house. Those people used to do it with the mirror.
Yeah, and I'm just going to come back to one piece of that, which is, we're a firm that's done a ton of work for Planned Parenthood, and I think both of us
Yeah.
took Cecile Richards' death kind of very hard, both because we knew we were going to miss her, and I particularly took it hard because, man, I mean, she literally died on January 20th.
Yeah,
And I'm
Before he
like,
was born in.
I
yeah,
know.
and like of
Thank you.
all the worlds that she experienced last, man, this one blows. And one thing that Kirk Adams, her husband, and Lily Adams, her daughter, have taken around, as they've been talking about stuff, is still understood better than anyone that you always fight. If you win, you fight. If you lose, you fight. And sometimes it's all or nothing, like an election. But there's all kinds of things that happen on the margins. I was just listening to Barack Obama on Mark Maron's final podcast, and he's talked about convincing his daughter not to give up on climate change. And he's like, yeah, we're probably going to blow past 2 degrees, but guess what? Two is better than 2.1, and
Yeah.
2.1 is better than 2.15. Like you always can do something on the margins. That your work always matters, even if you lose.
Yeah. Well, and I
Another
love
part of
hearing about winning too. Like we can't give up when we win too. Yeah. Sorry, Sarah, what were you saying?
Another part of that is, in part through Planned Parenthood, we have done work in every state in the country now. And a lot of that work is storytelling, narrative-based, individuals sharing their lives with us.
Yeah.
And the thing that happens when you get out of DC and you get away from the quote unquote best tested messages and just let people talk about what happens in their lives and their communities, you start to really realize there's a thread that makes America what we are, that makes individuals resilient. And the more you can refresh yourself with that, the better. Because here we see it as moving a needle daily. Where exactly is the congressional average? Out there, people are trying to be families and live life as happy as they possibly can. And the more we stay in touch with that, touch grass and the
Yeah.
non, as you might say, the better we are at doing our jobs at the end of the day.
Oh, 100%. And you guys do an amazing job of bringing those stories to life. I have seen many of your ads over the years, and you've had some great successes. And I think it matters. And I think even last cycle, I know working with you guys on a few things, like you had some big wins even in a tough year. So, like, again, going back to the margins, right? Like, if we can win where even if it's like that ballot initiative that protects it in one state, if it's this one thing that we're doing to elect like we're making that impact. All of the margins matter, and I think that's so right. I'm wondering, like, when we kind of look back on 2024 and sort of what happened in that cycle, what do you think was some of the bigger pain points, or what was the biggest pain point for us?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
Need
the
the
extent to which we
hour.
lost, yeah,
We need the
it's
hour
the
to make.
extent to which we lost control of the information environment,
Yeah.
which is, I think what, our line of work with our job descriptions still very much matters.
Yeah.
But there's a whole world out there of just people who do not hear from us, do not want to hear from us.
Yeah.
And I think, cracking that nut is, one of the biggest challenges we have going forward. Because it used to be if you were an information avoider, you were fully out of the system and, we didn't care how poorly informed you were. And now, those people went and showed up. So we gotta work that out. I mean,
Armed
we
with
we don't know if
discipline.
they're turning up again, but we got to pay attention to them.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that answer doesn't fully get to what we missed, which is a lot of the pain that people were going through
Mm.
and owning the role that Democrats have had in not fully addressing that pain, not making it better.
Yeah.
And we have to deal with that as a party. Like we have to come to terms that there were a lot of people who felt left out in the Obama years. There are a lot of people who had no idea what happened during the Biden years.
Yeah.
And a potential solution to the pain you're feeling is better than no solution to the pain you're feeling. Now, we may not have experienced it that way, but a lot of people did. And some of that was because they weren't getting the information from us. And some of it was because we weren't talking to them in the ways in which they live their lives, and the ways in which they speak, and the communities that they exist in. Um, and I think, as a party, we need to come to some terms about how our party got smaller. We made it uncomfortable for people to exist in our tent. And how do we build that tent bigger and welcome more people in?
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, one thing, we just, referenced kind of the hope and change of the Obama 2008 campaign. And, very few people look to the 2012 campaign as inspiring. No one singles out ads from that. Um, but I think one thing that kind of stuck with me is the closing ad that campaign made, the one voiced by Morgan Freeman, of whom I do not have a plausible impression. But every president has faced challenges, but few have faced so many. And
Yeah.
I think we had, if there was a failure on our part, of a thing we had control over. I think it was, not adequately shaping the narrative to say, hey, listen, there's a lot of external things going on. I know you do not want to hear the word COVID ever again, but it did go and screw things up, and we were the ones, bridging us back from all that chaos.
Yeah.
And I just think there was a story to tell about big things happening and Democrats moving things in the right direction, despite the world being out of our control. And I think we probably didn't get that tone right,
Yeah.
in terms of, hey, things suck, but here's how we've helped mitigate it, and here's how we're going to take things going forward.
Yeah, for
People
sure.
don't trust you to unfuck their lives if they don't think that you recognize that they're fucked in the first place.
Yeah, 100%. Like if you, and the thing is we were all hurting and so tired from COVID. Like the fact that you were like trapped in your house and you were in the, and so 4 years later, if somebody's like, oh, it's awful, but I can fix it, it's so much easier to say they can fix it, right? Than when they weren't the ones having to trudge through and lead through that. And so I feel like so much is like, you just can't tell somebody like it's going to be okay, just keep going with me when it sucks, and people believe you, like it's just, you got to do a little more to dig into that. And I feel like that's exactly what you two are saying is that we just missed how to dig in a little deeper, you know? And I loved the bigger build a bigger tent because he was like all about build back better, but to build that tent a little bigger,
For
I
who?
think. Yeah, right. Exactly. I'm excited. I think that there are, you know, good things that will happen in the 2026 midterms. I think we're going to be hopefully, okay, I'm knocking on wood here in the 2025. But I am curious, like, what you guys are looking to just maybe see as a good thing or do differently, or what you are excited about for this coming cycle to kind of, you know, make your impact and really make a difference, what you think that might be.
I'm excited that more people are trying to think about doing things differently. 20 years in this business, we've done a lot of things the same. We try to be smarter every time, and sometimes being smarter actually makes us a little worse at what we do. So I think the fact that people are in a mode where we're putting more communication out, I would love to see more and more of it, but I do think it's happening. And it's happening from decentralized places of power. So it's happening from people in communities. So if you are a person who doesn't work directly in the DC area and you're listening to this, I think you hold the keys to making this election really successful in
Yeah.
some respect. And that is making sure that every one of these congressional districts, no matter what they look like at the end of the day, we play in, we fight for. I came to Washington after winning a congressional race in Oklahoma, where I grew up, Oklahoma, the
Love
same
that.
year that George W. Bush was elected. Now, that's a weird crossover voter to vote for George W. Bush and then vote for a Democrat in a congressional race. It was a seat that hadn't flipped in like 30 years or something like that. We have to play in seats like that. I'm excited that we're going to. I'm excited that it seems like we're going to. Our plans are to play in places like that and tell stories that aren't just one note, but really representative of how specifically a community is struggling, but also has an opportunity to thrive.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think, so much of what I'm excited about is on our end because we got a bunch of smart people thinking smart thoughts about how to do this. But I mean, also, it just feels like, as much as it sucks that we're going into the teeth of all this authoritarianism, I mean, the fact is, we're back to an electorate that thermostat is flipping hard for us. And, people understand that, oh yeah, Republicans screw up healthcare when we give them a chance. Oh yeah, we're willing to give them some benefit of the doubt on inflation stuff, but they don't care. They're not going to do anything that helps me. And I think, even Americans, I'm not going to be able to cite my sources here, but like Americans are more sympathetic to our position on immigration than they have been in like a decade.
Yeah.
That, they thought they were voting for a thing and what they got, was exactly what Trump said he was going to do. They just heard it a different way and thought it was going to be something else, and they don't like what they're getting. So I think, the fact that we're working with, one thing, reflecting back on, in 2010, when we all, started our firms out of, it's like there were three big issues on the table in 2010. A bailout we couldn't talk about, a stimulus that no one thought did any good, and healthcare reform that wasn't going to have any benefits for a couple of years. And, I don't know what you ran ads on in 2010. I ran ads on Michelle Bachmann taking a whole bunch of federally funded or lobbyist funded plane flights,
Right.
which, it's bad. She shouldn't have done that. But, civilization was at stake, and that's what voters wanted me to talk about or were willing to hear from me about. So I think the fact that we'll be, running on our issues, stuff we actually believe in, and people at the moment agree with us on,
Yeah.
like, I find that heartening.
Yeah. It's not quite as sexy as the federally funded flights, but you know.
Yeah.
As
Yeah,
somebody
go
who
ahead.
got into politics because of healthcare and because of the inequality in basic access to healthcare, my mom has been sick for most of my life. And knowing what she did and didn't have access to, sitting on a reservation in Oklahoma, learning what many people, just the very basics people didn't, as a 19-year-old, didn't have access to. Really, now at this age, we might be on the verge of having yet this conversation that we started a little bit with
Yeah.
Obama about how everybody deserves some basic level of healthcare as a basic human right. And I actually see more people moving there. And Matt, your facial expression suggests perhaps you don't agree, but I see more people
Agreeing.
doing that.
I
I
love
have
just being
happiness,
dramatic as a,
hope about us getting
yeah.
there.
Yeah.
No, that I don't know if you have to edit this out. Edit this out. This face was me trying to turn off the sound on my messages without my glasses on, which I succeeded.
Oh, well, yeah. So we all have those faces.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Sorry, man.
yeah.
At like a certain
Dana,
age,
you might
you're
want to have
like,
editing
I
talk about
can't,
that.
what?
Hold it
I
out.
do, I do the lean in whenever anyone puts their something on the screen, and then I'm like, I should just get my readers instead of putting my face this close to the screen.
Yeah,
So no worries on that. No worries on that. Well, I'm glad you do agree because I think that's right. I think that like people went bankrupt, right? Because they had healthcare costs and we're back in this position of that being a reality, right? And like being hurt by your pre-existing conditions. And obviously there is some brewing resentment when you see this like terrible, I'm not saying it's right, reaction to the murder of the United Healthcare CEO and people are celebrating. Like obviously there's some feelings towards how we are doing our healthcare system right now. So I think we're on the precipice of that conversation that needs to go a little further than it did. We started it, but
yeah. And again, for anyone out there dispirited about the authoritarianism, I mean, regimes that successfully pull off democratic backsliding do it by giving away a ton of stuff and becoming very popular.
yeah,
Like they just load people up with goodies. And the fact that, the current regime is essentially doing a whole bunch of terrible, unpopular things that are going to have real life consequences in households across America while they're trying to do the democratic backsliding. Um, it's no fun to experience, but it certainly increases the odds that we win.
yeah, yeah. That's the silver lining. See who says you're a pessimist.
Yeah,
See, we're finding all kinds of good optimism in Matt right there. No, I do agree though. And unfortunately, we do have to lose something to win again, right? Because people don't, it's enough for us to say, oh, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, but it's not reality to people until they, unfortunately, like all of us feel it. And we're like, oh, now I see what you were saying,
yeah.
right?
No,
That's not just a scary tale you're telling.
yeah, and it's tough because we're Democrats, and we want people to have better lives. And letting America touch the stove is not something any of us signed up for. But
I think about this all the time. Like the truth of the matter is, if you think about that Biden debate where he did not do a good job, we as Democrats were like, oh my God, throw him to the sea. Like, and I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but we say our feelings. And when someone does something, we're like, that was bad. If that had been the Republican, if that had been him, they would have all sat there in the spin room and said, that went wonderful. What are you
yeah, I
talking
mean,
about? I didn't say
Trump
anything
had
wrong.
Trump had a stroke on stage in the waning days of the campaign, and every Republican basically said it doesn't look like anything to me.
Right. That's what I'm
You
saying.
know,
We're just not that kind of party, which is
yeah,
why
yeah,
I'm
it's the
like, we're
bird.
not
Yeah,
protecting the Epstein files.
yeah,
Like,
it's
there's
one of the
someone in
it's
there.
one of the burdens we carry as,
Yeah.
the party of reality. One thing I do want to say about this Epstein stuff, just because both
Yeah.
Sarah and I kind of stuck it in there, but I think we all need to keep in mind that Epstein is not like some unique, gotcha we have in mind for Trump. There's actually like a real issue at the heart of this that's a lot bigger than a guy, which is, how much in this society are we going to have one set of rules for the powerful and the connected and one set of rules for everyone else? And, it's not that, again, Epstein in his own right, and, it's one of the many things for which Trump, should be under the jail for a long time. But it's actually right in the heart of a real set of issues. Um, and I think the fact that we're fighting on this is not some sort of adjunct side project. It's actually fully consistent with what we are trying to do as people who are
Mhm.
trying to, build a healthier public life and a healthier, commonweal.
They're also real victims. They're real
Yeah.
victims who
Mhm.
deserve some element of justice. And Taryn, you are exactly right. We don't care who's in those files. At the end of the day, it's about finding justice and having truth come out. And that
And
shouldn't be a
upholding the
partisan
law.
thing.
Like to Matt's point, upholding the law is not just for some. Like I don't know. That was part of the reason I always felt like I wanted to be in politics because I was like, well, then make good laws, right? Like if people don't want to follow a law and no one's following it, then it's probably not a good law. Like, right? Like let's make good law. Let's like figure out good ways to help people to do the right thing, to make sure we're protecting ourselves and society. Because this is the law, and it seems like it's a pretty good system. That's got a lot of flaws, don't get me wrong, but it does seem like we want to uphold our Constitution. We want to uphold these laws. And one thing that I think drives everyone insane about Donald Trump is that he's like, it doesn't matter. I don't have to pay my vendors. I don't have to follow the law. I don't have to do anything because I'm Donald Trump. And that is infuriating on so many levels, but especially when you're the president of the United States and supposed to be upholding the law,
Yeah, and I mean, one thing we kind of, never managed quite to get to land was, I mean, there's some notion of, he did it for himself and now he's going to do it for us, which has been a lie every minute he's been in public life, but some people just refuse to be pried off of that. But, maybe when their healthcare disappears.
Yeah, I don't know. There's some like the real like MAGA, like real like ones who are very much like nothing he can do no wrong. Like I'm seeing them lose jobs and I'm seeing them like and they're like no no it's gonna be okay, right? Like and I do think that that is a small number of people of his true following. I think there were people who voted for him and
30% of people.
yeah,
About
but
30% of people who aren't going to move, and that's okay.
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
The other
yeah, I
number
mean,
is
and
70, and
again,
70 is super.
yeah, I mean, that's
It's
again, that's a,
it's all of us that are everyday Americans, and I think whether you're a Republican or an independent or whatever, that are not like before this guy and after this guy, right? Like, so I think those are the ones that's going to move the country to be like, wait a second, we've had a constitution for quite a while. I think we'll stick with that, not you, But there are some of those MAGA folks who are very, very intent to no matter what he does. And he said it himself. Remember, he said that thing about like I can stand in the street and shoot somebody and they'll still love me. And he
yeah.
really believes that. And I think there are people who probably are right there with him.
Yeah,
Did
I mean, again, I mean, and Lord only knows when none of us want to relitigate 2016, but Hillary got it right that there are some people who are deplorables and like the actual Donald Trump, they see him for what he is and are like, yay. But there are a whole bunch of people who voted for an entirely imaginary Donald Trump.
hmm
Who just, when you have a guy who says a whole bunch of stuff that is not true and he does not himself believe, that, part of that empowers you to say, oh, he's just going to do the stuff I agree with. And, again, that's a tough thing to, live through in 2024. But, the fact that, the Donald Trump that a bunch of people were imagining is not there, some people are going to notice.
Yeah,
I
for
can
100.
co-sign that sentiment. Not, I can co-sign the sentiment, but not the words. I think that the our ability to name call each other is actually quite the problem here,
Mm,
and helped lead to Donald Trump, and is directly in the flies in the opposition of what you see when you go talk to normal people, even ones who are 100% MAGA, 100% there. There is something redeemable about every person, and eh, even if they are so strongly they're never going to move, that's okay. We don't need to convince every single person to be on our side about every single thing.
yeah. Yeah, and I don't feel like we have to agree on every, you're right, like the two-party system is a good thing. We don't have to, but we do need to but that's where I said I want to uphold the law, right? Like that's where
Yeah.
my line in the sand is. I'm like, but like, if I don't like the law, then I can elect somebody to help me get a new law or enact the law or change the law. But like, I just feel like if it is the law, we need to uphold it and we need to figure out how to do that. But then you see this slippery slope that we're seeing. And then I'm like, I don't know. There's another part of me that's like, but what happens when the law collapses and where's that point? So it's interesting, needless to say, what he has kind of done to all of us in terms of making you think in a way that you're not used to. I do want to switch gears for a second and just talk about a little bit about you guys as business partners because I run a business and I run a political business and I know a lot of people that run political businesses. And I was actually reading, I don't know if you guys even know her, but Nicole Lancet had that, used to work at the DCCC, and she's now in this carpool detective book as that during the pandemic, she solved a cold case using her opposition research skills. But at one point in the book, she says, well, I left politics because it's a soul sucking business. And I said, oh, I'm like laughing while I'm reading the book. And I was like, yeah, that is kind of a little bit of a soul sucking business. But that being said, the reason I'm saying that is because it's hard. It's you guys have been in business together for 14 years and worked together before that. And I think it's so amazing when you can find a good partner and business partner and someone who thinks like you do or doesn't always agree. It doesn't matter. That's what's so great about this conversation. And I'm just curious, like, if you think there's some kind of success recipe here, formula, something you guys have done, or, what it is that might be something useful to somebody who is running a business or is working with somebody else.
I would say we more frequent. Well, Matt and I are two very, very different people and with very, very different backgrounds. And that is actually an asset to
I
us.
agree. I was like, I know both of you, and I feel like that's what's so great about you two, because you're like, wait, I need both of those opinions and I want them. Yeah.
We disagree a fair amount and aren't afraid to. And I think that actually serves our clients at the end because you can see multiple ways of getting to a solution if you start from a different premise necessarily, often at least.
Yeah.
Um, but Matt has a phrase that I'll steal for the purposes of this, but we have a relationship that has a business attached to it. And making sure that you are friends before before you think first and foremost about the business is always been important to us, at least, that Matt is somebody I care about. I will care about to the day I die. I certainly do not think that we will be making political ads till the day that I die, or I hope at least.
What?
Um, there's something that will succeed beyond this business, and protecting that relationship has always also been important to us.
Yeah, I'd second that. And I mean, I think part of the being very different people is, one thing we are in full agreement on, and unfortunately, is we're both extremely intent on being right.
Mm,
Um, and frankly, we used to have a ton of fights.
political people are.
Yeah, we used to have a ton of fights that were fundamentally unresolvable. Like we were in full agreement that when we pitched the Missouri Senate at some point 20 years ago, the pitch went very badly.
Yeah.
We completely disagree on the manner in which it was terrible.
Mm.
Sarah remembers them as hostile. I remember them as indifferent. And we'd fight about something like this from time to time. And it's just like, wait a minute, there's no stakes here. And also, we have no capacity to resolve this.
So let's
So
refresh it every couple of years.
yeah,
Well,
yeah, yeah.
especially that it was 20 years ago. I love that. Like, it's obviously still top of mind.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was like a Stanford prison experiment of non-responsiveness is what I call it. But I think that over time you just realize that you don't confuse the immediate with the important.
Right.
And
Yeah.
after the 500th version of these, it's like how much does my ego really matter here? And it maybe annoys me a little when I concede on something and still think I'm right, but I'll get them next time.
We also do a thing that we like to call aggressively agreeing.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
When we're doing it right now, but we also kind of agreed to stop that. Like, hey, we're having a fight, even though we agree with the path out of this. We're just
but we're still
arguing
just
about the third
continuing
most
it.
important premise that got us here.
But
And
thanks for taking us into the marriage counseling part of this
I
yeah,
mean,
podcast.
you
I
can
was
do that
like,
recreationally if you want, but
this is
most of us
great.
have
Yeah,
lives to
no.
lead.
I love that though, because I actually do think like working together, Lauren and I do that too, but it's like I think in the aggressively agreeing, we're like, wait, I think we're saying the same thing, but yet we're arguing back and forth about it. I do actually think sometimes that's very healthy here as I'm putting on my armchair therapy
Yeah.
here. But like I would say that's healthy because otherwise you're not like holding it all in, right? Like you're like saying it out loud. I don't know. I think part of being in this business is that we have to say stuff out loud, right? Like otherwise it bubbles up and then you might have that explosive moment where you just can't take it anymore.
Well, at the end of the day, we're also paid for what we think. So if we hold it in, we're not doing our jobs.
right, right. I know. I've never been able to like be that client. Like if it's a client, they're doing something, I'm like, I will throw my body on this train, right? Like I'm not going to let this get out of control. I know. That's also that goes back to these Democrats and their honesty thing. It's like That's part of our appeal, but also can be a little bit tough sometimes. I love that though, and I think you guys like I'm sure you have a lot of great stories over the years. I feel like I've gotten to hear some of them or be a part of some of them. But I love when people tell like what they think is one of those sort of favorite memories over the last 14 years or even before that that you guys have in working in politics and in what you felt like maybe made the biggest impact.
Well, one of the biggest things that we have done is we were part of the marriage equality fight and passing the freedom to marry. So no matter what, we get to go to our graves knowing that we helped a whole bunch of people live
Yeah.
the lives that they wanted and have it recognized in front of their friends and family and God, if that's what they believe in. There was a lot of a lot of work that went into getting that fight in 2012 right. And one of the things that we knew we needed people to say was that gay and lesbian couples want similar things to me and my family if it was coming from a straight person, obviously, in this. And we were in, I forget where in Minnesota, but
We were right outside of Duluth.
okay, so small town Minnesota. We had the cutest grandparents that we hadn't actually come to film them, but like they're there and they were amazing. And he's on it, has his veteran hat on, and it's everything that you kind of picturesque
Yeah.
about small town Minnesota.
Yeah, they had
Minnesota,
come.
nice.
Yeah, we had found the perfect couple um, to film, and we set up the shot perfectly in front of the lake. And the parents, the 80 something parents of the wife of the couple, just they'd never seen a shoot before, so they showed up.
We were the biggest attraction in town.
Yeah, we would just see what it was like, and it's like, well, we brought the crew, the whole crew here. You guys want to be in an ad? And they're like, okay.
So we have this line that's gay and lesbian couples want similar things. So we need her to say that line. It's been well tested, it's well focus grouped. We know that this line does work in the ad. This poor woman could not get out the word lesbian to save her life. And there's a moment where you're standing next to a beautiful lake in small town Minnesota, yelling the word lesbian over and over at a 80-year-old woman being like, I think we're making progress here. I think we're
Yeah.
making progress in America.
Did she
Uh,
nail it? Did she finally get lesbian out?
We settled on lesbian people.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
And by the way, that ad with those grandparents tested better than the perfect couple that I was
That
convinced
was the
was going.
original intent.
Yeah, I was going to be the campaign. I thought was going to be the campaign winning ad, and in fact, the grandparents were the campaign winning ad that also won a read Nepali. So I guess it's the moral of the story is be ready for anything. Um,
Well, it's never what you think. I think
yeah,
that's
it's
the
never
life
what you think.
lesson,
Yeah.
right? It's never what you think.
Yeah, Nate Silver, David Shore, someone described Democratic consultants as being, quote, face blind about
Uh,
what messages are actually good. And, on the one hand, go fuck yourself. On the other hand,
you didn't really get everything right, if you
yeah,
remember.
on the other hand, have some humility about what's out in the world. I'm going to tell not a shoot story. I'm actually going to steal some valor from that campaign,
Mm.
a thing that did not involve me, but it's a good reminder of the stakes, which is we worked really, really hard on that campaign. It's some of the best work we've ever done. We recognized the stakes. We brought everything to bear on it, serious, funny, the whole nine yards. And largely unrelated to us, they ran one of the most aggressive phone bank programs the state of Minnesota had ever seen by that year, 2012. Um, and there was one night that they were calling, and one of the callers like raises their hand and summons like the room manager, and the person comes over and is like, "Well, what's going on? Does this voter like? Can you not figure out where his polling place is? Like, what's the issue here?" And he says, you have to hear the story, which is the guy that they had called was an older man with a gay son who he was estranged from. And he said, when my son came out to me, I couldn't process it, I couldn't handle it, and we never got it right.
Mm,
Um, and I'm never going to be able to make things right with my son, but I can do right by him by voting the right way on this
yeah.
amendment. So that story now is a postscript, which I've been telling that story for what is it, 13 years now. And I think, it's an important and true story that reminds us of the importance of the work
Yeah.
we do. I told that story within the past year to someone from the campaign who looked back at me and said, that happened pretty much every night.
Oh, yeah.
And, just, keeping in mind, again, it's That's not a someone stole all the food from the craft services table story or whatever. But I think it's a
No, it's
reminder.
better. It's better. That's the impact. That's the
Yeah,
real.
it's a reminder of what
Yeah,
we do
and it gets
really.
you through. Remember the first question we asked us, like, how do you get through? Well, that's how you get through. You have to harken back to those memories where you did something that was so extraordinarily good for so many people, and just remember that we can do that again, and we will get there again.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also having Planned Parenthood as our flagship client for many of the first years of the firm, which is people trust you with their stories.
Yeah,
Um, and we were reminded basically every day of what the stakes were in real people's lives.
yeah,
We've done so many of these that involve telling real people's lives. And for a long time, part of my job is to sit on the other side of the camera and do what I hold your hand while you cry, while I elicit this very vulnerable story from you. And part of the reason why I feel like we're on this edge is right before the election. I was standing in a field for a project that was actually not electoral, so poorly timed when we filmed this, but we were in rural Wisconsin, on a farm, what had been a hog farm and
mm,
had turned into a solar farm. And the guy started telling me about how in the 90s, the bottom fell out of the hog market because of corporate consolidation, and really started walking me through. And at
yeah,
some point, I'm holding the hand of a 70, almost 70-year-old, very grizzled, like, guy who definitely showers when the day is done kind of guy, because he was talking about how he lost his business.
mm-hmm,
And that kind of storytelling and remembering those kind of moments is what does fuel us at the end of the day. Those are
yeah,
the people who I'm 100% sure this guy voted for Trump, but I also know that he's available to us. And I know he's feeling real pain right now.
yeah.
Um, I wish we could go back and see him and see how his like solar and wind is doing, given all of
Yeah.
what has happened over the last few months.
I know because they're going in a different direction, and do you blame or not? And yeah, but the openness for someone to be able to share your story, like I will tell you, I like sat with these two many times, and I'll tell my stories to them too because they're the kind of people that you want to tell your stories to. I think that is probably the secret to your success, you guys, is that you are the kind of people who listen and who can ask the right questions to hear what people really want to tell you, and it makes it for a really, really amazing experience for the kinds of ads you make and for the kind of people you are. So, keep fueling yourself with all the good things you do because you guys are really needed in this industry for sure. I'm gonna wrap us up in a second, but I want to ask because I leave everyone with the same question about the predictions for the elections. We have 1 week till 2025. If you want to not nail that one, you can. If not, but I definitely want to hear what you guys think will happen in 2026 and see what you think is your prediction. I won't hold you to any of it, and there's
Well,
no
I
money
feel
if you win.
no prize.
No
I
prize. I
feel
mean, I can make one. I can make a
extremely
gold
good.
star.
I feel extremely good about what's going to happen next week in New Jersey and Virginia and California. I think both we have very strong candidates who've run good races. Prop 50, who's done what it needs to do and explained what's going on, had a more complicated conversation than a lot of elections have to have. And I think we should take a note about that.
Yeah.
So I feel very good about that. I think we're going to end up with a whole bunch of congressional districts. We're going to watch, particularly in Texas, I think, Republicans overplay their hand and make districts more competitive. And I hope as a party and as funders out there who might listen to this, that we keep in mind investing in those places that might be considered traditionally a R+8, R+7 kind of district, because we might have that kind of year. I feel pretty confident.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd second that, which is, I feel like we as obviously we're all pretty shell shocked by all the terrible things and spent all the money in 2024 and it didn't necessarily work out. But, I don't think we've really processed that we might be coming up on a D+9, D+11 year.
Mhm.
And, we need, uh, really to be thinking about some of these places that look hard in a normal year, but when you very obviously destroy everyone's health care and are building a ballroom, uh, you know, I think we may be in that kind of environment. The prediction I'm going to make is not as binarily falsifiable, which is, I think we're all underestimating the extent to which repro is going to be an interesting issue
Oh,
next year. That, there's maybe some thought that it was not the magic bullet for us in 2024 just because people had thoughts about inflation and didn't want to have thoughts about anything else. But, let's remember, even before Dobbs, it was a very important signifier issue. And people were really ready to understand something about Republican candidates if they were bad or terrible on the issue. And I think that, and obviously, consider the source. We have repro clients, so I'm talking my own book here. But I think those guys are right, which is, even if people do not see it as the existential fight the way we sure hope they would, people really do understand that it really is an insight to how these bad guys think about the world in ways that do not connect with my own life. And since I shit talked a little bit about David Shore earlier, I will say he has been banging the drum for the electorate is as in favor of abortion rights and reproductive freedom as it's ever been.
yeah.
That, whatever issues you might raise about salience, agreement, we're doing gangbusters. And I think we as our own movement haven't processed it, and more importantly, Republicans haven't processed it. And I think, even though I'm saying it out loud on a podcast, we have the capacity to take them by surprise on this.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I hope that they're not listening to my podcast. I think that we
They
hopefully,
should,
well,
everyone
yeah,
should.
I know everyone should. Kendra Horn, I always use as my example. And I know that Sarah is from Oklahoma, so she'll love that. But Kendra is a dear friend and a former client. But, she won in 2018 because she did catch them by surprise. She pointed out all of the things that the incumbent wasn't doing, like, oh, he didn't get your social security check, well, I'm right here, I'll go fight your, like, she just went door to door and outworked them, and he was like, oh, who's this woman, she's not going to be able to do anything to me, and took him right out. So I feel like I'm hoping this is that 2026 feeling that we can just do. I want to win in places where we don't win. And I actually remember in 2006, I worked at the DCCC, and the sort of core races, we didn't really end up winning a lot of those. Like the one, we ended up winning all these other places.
Yeah.
And it wasn't that we did, but like some of the ones we spent the most amount of money on, like we didn't win. But the rest, like we did. Like I'm thinking there's Minnesota where we spent so much money and we didn't win. But then like New Hampshire, we were
Yeah.
like, got
Thank
it,
you for
nailed
John
it.
Hall.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
today's John Hall. Today, the only John Hall callback anywhere on the internet today.
Yeah.
He is, in fact, still the one.
He's, I'm hoping he is listening and knows.
Yeah,
Shout
we can
it out.
track it down and email it to him.
I know.
Hey, we
I am
shouted you
gonna
out.
make
We
sure
liked
to
your
connect.
2006 campaign.
Yes, we did. We need more of those in 2020, 20 years later, right? There you go. There you go. So hopefully it'll be just like that another in the 20th anniversary. Do it all again.
Yeah, the John Hall Memorial 2026 landslide. I think he's still alive.
He is, I think. Well, now that I say that, I'm probably wrong. But like because I said it too confidently, but I'm pretty sure he
All
is.
right.
Well, thank you guys. Thank you both. It is so fun always to talk to you. And I'm glad we got to have such a great discussion. And thank you guys. Hopefully I'll have you guys back.
Thank you so much for
Yeah, we'd love
doing
to come back.
such a fun conversation to have with you, and I hope it inspires and brings more people into the process.
That's what we're hoping for. That's what my goal is here. So thank you both. Thanks for listening to Political TrailMix. Make sure to follow and review wherever you get your podcasts, and stay connected with me on Instagram and YouTube. Let's keep this conversation going.